I got the experience of the Colombian lockdown, and then I came to Europe to experience lockdown here. So
Okay,
yeah, life's great.
nice. We're full. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Doing great, Sebastian. How you doing, man?
I'm all right. Thank you.
Sorry, I clicked on the Hangout that was part of another invite, so I'm here.
Okay, that's nice. Well, thank you for being here. I think we should start right now. It's 3 minutes later, but it's fine. It's fine. I want to welcome everybody to this virtual Lean Startup night, even though it's, it's not at night today here, or even in States, but it is for Dan there in Germany. It's almost midnight there, and that's why indeed that's why we are doing this at this time. I want to thank a lot to our amazing panelists for being here, for your willingness to join us in this event, to share your thoughts and your experiences regarding this really hot topic. I want to thank also to the Lean Startup Co. For their support. I have to remember that this is an official event of Lean Startup. So we're going to try to be very efficient with time since it is quite late for Dan, and we don't want him to get hungry again and he has to to have dinner again. We'll get fired.
Much appreciated.
So saying that, we're going to start right now by briefly introducing, our guests of honor. They of course, they will tell us more about themselves later, but I'm going to make a very brief introduction. First, we have Dan. He comes from entrepreneurial background, and he's been involved with technology startups all across the world. However, recently, last years, he has focused more on corporate innovation management, and more specifically in on corporate venturing. He's a global corporate venturing expert, as you may know. He's based in Europe, but we all of us I think we have read his book, The Corporate Startup. So thanks, Dan, for being here.
Thank you.
Also, we have Jason Hauer, who is an experienced entrepreneur and growth hacker. He's also a Lean Startup Circle organizer. Jason is the co-founder of the Garage Group, which is a company based in Cincinnati, dedicated to bringing Lean Startup innovation or Lean innovation to big corporations. He will tell us more about that in a few minutes. We met Jason I think about 3 years ago at the Lean Startup Conference in San Francisco. It's a pleasure to have you here, mate.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we also have the pleasure to have Juan Duran, who is a very good friend of us. He's the head of innovation at XM or XM, which is a huge company, huge energy company here in Colombia. But also he's the leader of a corporate startup called EcoRegistry. He will also tell us more about that in a few. He's been successfully working with with all these Lean Startup principles within a very traditional and massive corporation, dealing with, all the strong culture, breaking up rules and procedures, experimenting, failing a lot. So thanks, Juan. Please tell us all the experience you have in doing this. And I'm Sebastián Castrillón. I'm the co-founder of Strateg, and I'm also an ambassador of Lean Startup Co in Colombia. I'm an entrepreneur and an innovation practitioner. Practitioner. In Strateg, basically what we do is we're corporate entrepreneurs on demand using Lean Startup principles. So companies pay us to start up on their behalf. So we understand how difficult and complex is for corporates to behave in a startup. So that's why we are here. That's like the general introduction. So I really want you to thank you again for being here, and let's start with, I don't know who wants to start. I mean, we have no ladies here, so you have to choose. Let's start with Jason. It's fine.
Sure, yeah.
If you're okay with that. So please tell us a bit about yourself, and also please give us some general facts, based on your experience about the lean startup principles applied to, within like corporate context. Like how is that in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Sebastian, for having us, and thank you guys for just the invite and having this conversation. We're all going through a lot this crisis, so I think this is timely and it's super important. I'm happy to be here. So as you said, I'm Jason Hauer, co-founder and chief growth officer at the Garage Group, and really we're our focus is helping big co's like we call in the States like Nike, Procter and Gamble, and Kraft Heinz take a startup inspired approach to solving their innovation and strategic growth challenges. And typically, like we're working across the enterprise, both with core brand teams that are trying to take brands into new spaces, as well as with teams that are looking to take advantage of opportunities in the market. And from our point of view, lean startup is definitely part of what we leverage, but we leverage what we call our lean growth playbook, which is this kind of it's defining kind of opportunity we're solving for, exploring, and then build, testing, and learning the solution. And lean startup is powerful, but we also pair it up with design thinking and jobs theory in terms of falling in love with the problem, helping teams come up with new ideas and then build solutions against them. And what I think is super powerful about lean startup is just a management tool in general, but just as a methodology, is it helps teams to go from, traditionally we're taught as executives that we have to be the smartest person in the room, we have to have all the answers, and we're executing flawlessly. And the area that we're in today, or the time, it's very uncertain. We don't all have all the answers. We need to be more humble than ever, and we need to be open to running experiments that actually give us the insights and opportunities we need to continue to move forward, right? And so I see lean startup as a very powerful tool. It's definitely part of like the mix of what we use. And I think the biggest thing from a corporation perspective in the States that I see is, used appropriately, it helps executives that, like I was saying before, that grew up with this execute mindset, learn how to search and learn how to experiment, and kind of it's the foundation of starting to be entrepreneurial as they're trying to solve these uncertain innovation and growth challenges that they face.
Thank you. I lost the microphone. Thank you. We'll get deeper in that in a few minutes. So Dan, tell us about yourself a bit, and please can you share your thoughts about it?
Sure. I mean, thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for the intro. By a great panel, you were able to handpick a very good bunch tonight. Yeah, as you said, my background is in entrepreneurship, so I'm used to building things, right? I'm used to building companies, used to building products, used to building technology. But then I might gradually switched to corporate innovation. It was actually more than by design. I was headhunted by a company to come join their product development department. And later on in the journey there, we realized that the way large organizations build stuff was just backwards compared to what startups were doing. And that's I think where the first seeds of what later became the corporate startup were planted, basically helping large organizations benefit from all these developments in methodologies that startups were using. So design thinking was one, lean startup is another. So many. This was such a big variety of methodologies they can pick up from. The thing is that I believe now, looking back, right? I think we're fairly mature when it comes to the application of the lean startup principle within large organizations. I'm not only talking about corporations, but also looking at NGOs, looking at the government, looking at like large groups of people. However, I believe that there is another step that people need to take, and that's basically, um, how should I put it? Live by the principles of the lean startup, because the lean startup doesn't start when you start building a product and it ends after you ship, right? Lean startup, I believe, and looking at lean manufacturing, looking at all these great methodologies, um, they do not end when the product is shipped. I think it's more of a mindset thing, and we need to internalize that and use it in other circumstances, in other spaces. For example, now I'm very much focused on applying the lean startup principles to strategy, right? How do you build a strategy in an iterative way? Because we know how to build products in an iterative way. But if we start building strategies in an iterative way, then we will not have the disconnect we currently have in large organizations when the executives believe and see X, and the product teams at the bottom see Y. And that Y is actually more truthful, I would say, because they're constantly iterating and learning from the market. And when they're bringing back that evidence, it contradicts what the C level had to say. So now, how do we convince the C level to live by the mindset of the lean startup and apply it in their day-to-day job? Same principles can be applied to transforming a large organization. I've done 4 large company-wide transformations in my life in various industries, and I know the importance of applying the lean startup principles when transforming large organizations. Instead of saying, "Here's my 5-year plan on how to transform this ginormous organization," to what can we ship in 1 month that's going to tell us that we're moving in the right direction with the transformation. We're seeing that evidence. So I think that's where we need to go. The next step we need to take is to internalize the principles and then apply it beyond just building simple products or complex products.
Nice, good. And Juan, who are you?
So, so thank you very much, Sebastian, for the invitation, and thank you all the speakers. Yes, I'm Juan. I'm an engineer, and I work at a big company here in Colombia. We are the independent system operator of the country, so we manage, operate the power system, and we administrate the wholesale energy market. This company is called XM, but it belongs to a bigger company, ISA, that is in energy, transportation, telecommunications. So our company is a company where you can find a lot of engineers, and I think I find that in our company a lot of people are creating solutions every day. So they don't know, but they are actually entrepreneurs inside a big company that are finding problems and making solutions. The thing with this lean startup movement is that it gave us a tool to be able to validate and to have follow our results and be able to experiment and have like an organized ways to organize our ideas and put them on behalf of the company's strategy. That's actually very important because, as I see it, and as Jason actually told, we engineers always love the problems, always love the solution. We are in love with the solution sometimes, but we have to see it as a way to solve a problem inside the company that helps the strategy move forward. And that's actually uh, why I think Lean Startup is very powerful, because it brings you the tools that will help you fulfill this strategy through the implementation of innovation. That's actually what I think is the key role of lean startup in a big company.
Okay, nice, thank you. So I want you to tell us or to help us to think, why is it important for corporates to behave more like an entrepreneur, and mainly within this particular coronavirus situation or coronavirus context, which is a very, very complex global situation where everyone is trying to redesign their business models and everything. So we are all, for the first time in history, we are all in the same context. In Germany, in Colombia, in States, in Bangladesh, whatever, we are almost everyone in in a lockdown, within an economic crisis, with people with the hospitals full and everything. The economy is getting slowing down. So why is this topic so hot? Why should they behave like an entrepreneur, like in startup? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think Shopify's CEO, in an interview I was listening to, basically, and I agree with him, he was saying this moment in time has basically accelerated the digital transformation that we're in front of by a decade. So we're basically in 2030 from a digital adoption standpoint. And I think, to me, the key thing in that is most of the business models and the business systems that we operate within, there's massive disruption either happening to us right now or it's going to happen. And to me, being entrepreneurial, to me, is just being good business in terms of not just understanding the functional lane that you run in, but understanding how your business runs, how it operates, and being able to envision how you can continue to stay relevant and add value for customers. And so as simple as B2B companies that used to rely on in-person trade shows to sell to their business customers, all of a sudden they don't have that channel anymore, and they have to quickly innovate to a lot of core brands that were used to brick and mortar kind of distribution now have to all of a sudden rely on digital and e-commerce and other things. You see Pepsi was sitting on a couple of domains since 1997 and just stood up a subscription business for a lot of their products, right? And so I think it's just really caused a lot of disruption and a lot of opportunity. And to me, I love Dan's point in terms of strategy, because lean startup, we typically think it's around new venture and it's launching the next new service for the business in the corporate sense. But a lot of this is just solving uncertain strategic challenges across the business, whether that's workforce transformation to e-com strategy, et cetera, right? And to me, mastery of lean startup and entrepreneurship is it's good business sense. And mastery of it, to me, allows you to stay relevant and to change your strategy and to not waste effort in the process.
Thank you. And you want to say something? You want to add something to this? Any of you guys?
I will jump in here.
Okay.
I think it's a very interesting time, right? I mean, I remember my journey, right? I remember my journey of trying to convince executives that, hey, innovation is important. Hey, digital is important. Hey, doing the way you've been doing business is no longer going to be sustainable in the future. I remember saying that all the way until probably December of 2019. Some people were more reluctant than others. Some people were more open than others. I worked in many industries and in many countries. I know that, for example, in Europe, in Scandinavia, particularly in Norway, they are very open towards digital and innovation. So when I was working there, I know that the conversations there didn't start from why do I need to change, why do I need this, but it went more towards how do I get better at this, right? So totally different frame to that conversation. I think what the current situation is forcing us all to have a common experience, and this particular common experience is something that we can use together to build for the future, right? And everybody now can understand why digital is important, why lean startup is important, why innovation is important, right? You no longer need to go and try to sell the idea of, hey, there is a thing called uncertainty and we need to mitigate or we need to solve for that, because now uncertainty is something that everybody is living. We're creating that shared experience, that shared memory that everybody will now be able to personally relate to. And I think obviously in uncertain times, you need to look at ways not to necessarily predict the future because you can't, but you need to look at ways in which you can test the future, right? It's basically like being blindfolded in a room and you're only left with a stick and you need to find the exit. Right? How do you do it? You don't just walk towards the potential exit, but you start using the stick and start poking around and see if that sounds like furniture or its actual door. So I think it's not lean startup is not a silver bullet. Lean startup is not going to solve all your problems. Lean startup is not there to predict the future. Lean startup is just there, and all the iterative methodologies are just there to help you uncover the future, step by step, iteration by iteration.
Okay, great. So
So
the key, sorry, Juan, what I get from here is that the key is the word uncertainty. I mean, it's like we as entrepreneurs, when you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you are more prepared to embrace and to act, within a uncertainty context or something like that. That's what I get from there. Yeah.
Totally.
Yep. Juan.
yeah, so actually, what I wanted to add to this conversation about the situation that is happening right now all over the world is that actually I sometimes say it for our team, for our innovation team in our company, it was like a blessing because let's take eco registry for example, that we applied blockchain technology for the carbon offsetting market. That's that's something that when you say, okay, this doesn't have anything to do with COVID, but we have been working in innovation the last 3 years, around three and a half years, and it was very interesting that in Colombia we got a lot of calls, like said, okay, and we saw a lot of opportunities, like, okay, we have this technology, we have this knowledge, and we have acquired some knowledge about other technologies that we are experimenting to apply to our systems that we already have online, like, I don't know, remote sensing, satellite imaging, any other applications that we were thinking about to apply on our system. But when we got the call from other companies and from other startups, or even from governments in the city or something like that, it was very interesting that we saw, okay, guys, here we have solutions that can help us with this problem with the COVID. We can provide solutions that will help other companies, other people, the city itself. So it was actually like I have the feeling that on our team it was very interesting to see everybody was excited to having new problems and new solutions, and to see that we could manage the solutions with the technology we had. So actually these last 2 3 months have been very interesting to us because we are developing everything faster than it was before.
Great. Great. Thank you. Yeah, I know Eco Registry and it's amazing. So guys, What do you think that big corporations can do to rapidly tackle the current situation, the current global situation? How do you think that, in general terms, not going specifically to lean startup, but in general terms, when we say like act as an entrepreneur, so how can companies change their mindset to think in a more entrepreneurial way to overcome to this situation? What can they do now? Because they need the cash right now, you know. So how can they change everything they do every day? You know, the culture, the processes, all the things they have. Those things don't allow them to move fast. So what can they do? Because we as Dan and Jason said, we've been talking about this to corporates for years, saying, okay, go to digital transformation, innovation, change your processes, act faster, be agile, so many things. So what can we do now for the next, I don't know, in the next 6 months?
Well, I would say first of all, manage your cash flow, right?
Yeah.
Cash is king. I remember my professor in corporate accounting at the MBA. He was telling me that money is good, but cash is king. So manage, obviously manage your cash flow. Be liquid, right? Just sending out invoices that nobody is paying doesn't make sense, right? Just make sure you have cash. Second of all, I would have to say give more voice to the people that you've been ignoring for the past 5 years. You're gonna find them locked down in the basement somewhere with probably weird job titles, but you're going to find them in your office and a sign that they are there. Just look for post-it notes, right? If there's people using a lot of post-it notes and you've been ignoring those people for the past 5 years, probably you should talk with them because they probably have some really good ideas that you might consider um, um, for like the near future. And third of all, before I let the other guys jump in here, I would say I just remember as you were talking, I just remembered I think it was a Chinese proverb or I think it was Chinese anyways or Japanese doesn't matter. That says that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right? So the best time to start your digital transformation, the best time to become an innovative company was 5 years ago or maybe 7 years ago. The second best time is tomorrow. However, tomorrow you're not going to have the luxury of a long runway unless you're managing your cash flow. So go and manage your cash flow better and then go give more voice to young people, give more voice to the rebels in your company.
I think that's
And
great.
guys, feel free to
Yeah.
contradict me now.
No, I think it's great, and I think the things that I would build, like from a leadership perspective, I think this is a time for great humility and vulnerability. And maybe you grew up as the smartest person in the room, and you guys have your company has a great strategy. Like now's the time to question things, and it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to ask for help, just from a leadership mindset perspective. And then in addition to kind of what Dan was saying, my thought process is you have to understand like what's happening with your customers, with your consumers, if you're B2C, and just deeply understand like what's actually happening. I can't tell you how many leaders I've talked to in the past couple of weeks that are like, just kind of gonna wait till things settle down a bit and we get back to like a new normal. And I'm like, big mistake. Like now is the time more than ever to where you're studying what are they buying, how are they buying, what do they value, how are things changing? Because that to me is the insight then that is going to help you to understand how do you need to shift your strategy. And you're not exactly sure. To Dan's point, you ought to be prototyping and experimenting with your strategy, right? So to me, as a leader, you have to be humble, you have to be vulnerable, you have to ask for help. and you just learn from a market perspective as much as you can to understand really where are things going, where's your business model. Maybe it's vulnerable right now and or it's going to be vulnerable over the next 18 months, and then leverage that insight then to start thinking about, okay, pressure test your strategy to say, okay, maybe we're way over indexed on Horizon 3 and there's some shorter term digital stuff that we've got to prioritize, or maybe we're good to go, and short term marketing spend, we don't have to spend that to drive demand. Demand's there, so maybe we can actually reallocate that to the trees and more disruptive spaces we need to be planting, right? But you can't answer those questions if you don't have a good pulse of what's going on with your consumers or customers, and or understanding from a capability perspective, what are you capable of and where can you potentially redeploy those assets to few new segments of customers, et cetera, et cetera.
Don't let a good crisis go to waste, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What I mean, taking both comments from these guys, what are you doing in XM about that? How are you behaving more entrepreneurial? More like an entrepreneur. What are you doing?
Yes, I would rather talk about generally how I see how the big corporates are behaving, and I think some of them are behaving very good. And I think there are three phases in this situation. That the first situation is, okay, let's reorganize how we are working, how we are doing our jobs. Let's do some, home office for everybody is the first step, but we have to reorganize how we're working. That was the first phase of this situation. The second phase was, I think, realizing that there is a high probability that nobody is going to meet the goals that they set out to do this year. So actually realizing that the faster you realize that, is the better for you, for every company. So once you have realized that, so then you start thinking like an entrepreneur, because then you have needs, and to have needs is very important to be able to think like an entrepreneur. Then you start hearing the market, seeing how it's changing, how it's shifting, and then you have to shift your strategy as well, because actually you have to build, measure, learn, and I think the other part will be adapt to the new situation. And for big corporates, they have, I always say, like, they have a technical muscle, also a cash flow muscle sometimes, and they need to combine these two abilities to put them in the new reality and adapt to this new market, to be able to build, measure, and learn, because this new the rest of the year, so until then, for the next year, we will be changing, we will be having a lot of changes on the market. So everybody is going to change, and we will have to be able to adapt very fast to these changes. So from our side, from XM and ISA, I think we are doing the right thing. We already saw that things are going to be different this year, and we are adapting to this new situation. And even here in Colombia, is also we are right now having another situation, is that we are having a bit of a dry season, and it's very important for our energy system that we don't have a dry season. So we have two important things to change or to adapt to.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here from the audience, but I want to ask you mainly to Jason and Dan, how are companies dealing with this, and like embracing these things? And we've been talking here in your economies and your sides of the world. I mean, in America and in Europe. How are they doing? I mean, I think that Jason works with huge companies in States. and also you do it in Europe. So what have you heard and what have you seen about it? How are they dealing with this?
I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not really surprised by what I'm seeing, because I'm seeing that the companies that are taking action and are taking the right steps in the right direction are the companies that were good in innovation and were good in digital before the crisis hit, right? Now they are just probably doubling down on the initiatives they already had in the pipeline, or they are just managing their cash flow, continuing doing innovation and digital as they were doing. However, the companies that were not as advanced, not as mature as the first group I just described, the companies that are not that mature, I see them now struggling to understand what to do, right? And not even how to do it, but what to do. And it's a big difference between the what and the how. The what is basically the direction. The how is basically lean startup, agile, design thinking, right? What are the tools that I can reach out to in order to achieve my goals? And I'm seeing the companies that were not really clear on the what before the crisis struggling now. The companies that were very clear on the what, now they're just doubling down on the how problem.
So they're in danger. Really?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, I'm looking at industries such as automotive, in particular in Germany, right? Or like heavy industry here in Germany. These guys were not doing well in 2019, right?
Yep.
Coronavirus just accelerated their potential depths. I mean, I live in the south of Germany. I live in a city called Stuttgart, right? And we're known here for building cars on one hand and heavy industry. Bosch is from here. Bosch had a terrible year last year. Their earnings before tax was down 44% in 2019 from 2018. Now with the coronavirus, this just accelerated their downfall. Now, are they in a position to start taking actions and start moving? I have my reservations, because they were not a front runner in innovation before the virus. I'm not seeing them now, all of a sudden becoming this miracle company that can innovate overnight. On the other hand, I hope they will, because it's a company on which a big part of the city is relying on for employment. I mean,
Good.
Yeah.
Jason, how is it in States?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year, like 2019, I think you just saw we worked primarily like a lot of food and bev and CPG companies, as well as some like financial services companies. And I think you saw some companies last year proactively getting ahead of what they were thinking. There's a market correction coming this year. So there were some transformation projects that were started last year or even in 18. And to Dan's point, companies like Kroger here in Cincinnati, who is proactively invested in click and collect and e-com, is actually doing well. Their issues are more on the scale of a lot of that stuff, in terms of like the labor models and just is even the user experience set for the scale that they're facing. And I even think they had like a click and collect only location where it was just going to be a warehouse that I think they accelerated as well. So I think you're seeing companies that were already investing and committed to that doing very well in this environment. And if anything, it's given them confidence and just the business case to accelerate investment. I think you've seen some companies who were kind of on the fence. They were dabbling from an investment perspective, but in terms of the level of progress and this commitment wasn't there, and so this is driven that. And then I think there's a set of companies who they maybe are starting to think about innovation and growth, but they haven't put in the infrastructure, again, to what Dan was talking about in terms of new ways of working, agile, truly understanding kind of their business model not just from how it exists today, but what they want it to be. How is digital going to impact it? And so I think their sales are good now, but if they don't move quickly, they're going to be in a world of hurt because the world is going to pass them by. So, and that it goes back to my comment around, even in those situations, like we've got to study the hell out of like what's happening from a consumer or customer perspective, and just make sure that we're practically investing in the infrastructure and the behavior changes and the talent changes necessary to deliver on kind of the new results there.
Good. So we've been, reading and saying, as consultants maybe, that okay, we need to have an ambidextrous organization. You have to do things right now, horizon 1, but also you have to have projects in horizon 2, horizon 3, but also, as Dan said before, cash is, money is good, cash is
king.
Is key, yeah. So how is, and Angela Vanegas from the audience asked this, how is the situation changing the innovation focus in terms of what people are innovating in, for now and for the future? So, for example, I don't know, how is that funnel, the pipeline changing in XM and in the companies you're advising?
So I can talk a little bit about that, and I think it depends on how the company was taking the road of innovation before the crisis. So actually, innovation is not a mean, it's not an end, it's actually a tool to help the strategy be met. And if you have understood innovation, it's I always see it, okay, let's it's a way to fulfill some strategy points that could be on horizon 1, 2, or 3. It could be used actually everywhere. So the methodology can be used everywhere, and the projects, but the projects have to be aligned with the strategy. So I think the companies that will go further in this situation are the ones that understand which of the projects that they have on the funnel of innovation are the ones that are more accurate with this strategy, or also can recognize if they have shifted the strategy a little bit, which of those projects are attuned to this new strategy and to this new focus they need to have, and they will put their resources on exactly those projects, independently of they are about horizon 1, 2, or 3. That is not something I would say is the most important part of the equation. I think the most important part of the equation is to recognize which ones are the ones that are like in line with this new strategy that has to be shifted because of the situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know Innovation Leader. It's my buddy Scott Kersner's company. They do a good job with data. And I was looking at one of his reports that he sent out, and he was basically saying that 70% of innovation efforts have been impacted by this, and there's a lot of focus on short-term wins, with about like 30% of companies in their survey kind of staying the course with bigger bets. And so like I reflect that in terms of a lot of the conversations I've been having. It's very much that there's a lot of teams are being opportunistic in this, and some that have kind of invested well already and are stable or staying the course for sure. But most of the leaders are stepping back and saying, based on reality, based on what I'm learning, what am I going to change? And I would encourage the audience, if you're in a situation where you own budget in any capacity, you ought to be stepping back and saying, like, based on the reality, what's the best thing for the business right now? And in some cases, from a cash flow perspective, it may make sense to shut down a project or pause it. In other cases, it may make sense to accelerate it.
Okay, good, great. Dan, you have any to share there?
No, I want to echo some of the things that Jason just said. So yeah, check out Innovation Leader. I think they're doing some really great research. I love their work. Basically, what I'm seeing, again, pure observation. I don't have the amount of data that Jason just quoted. What I'm seeing is that a lot of people are just investing on incremental innovation now. They're investing a lot in innovation, but they're from that big pool of money that's going towards innovation. I'm seeing that a big chunk is going towards incremental innovation, right? Like small things that can, like low hanging fruits, small things that can give us results tomorrow or next month. But unlike the behavior they had with respect to H3 innovation, right, or transformational innovation, they're now investing more in that. So I think that's the shift that I'm seeing. Whether initially it was just primarily core innovation and then some bits and pieces to the other types of innovation, now I'm seeing yes, core innovation is important, but there's a big chunk of money going towards the transformational ideas, which is great. And I keep asking myself, why haven't you guys done that like 5 years ago or last year or whatever? But again, I think that what's important for people to pick up from this conversation and pick up from the situation that we are in is that they need to change their mindset. More importantly than investing in idea A or investing in idea B, or picking lean startup over design thinking, or making a mix of that. It's important to change your approach to business, change your mindset. You cannot expect different results with the same mindset. And my biggest fear following this crisis is that we're going to look back in 2022 or in 2021, we're going to look back at 2020 and realize that we're in the same place as we were in 2019. Right? Nothing changes. That's my biggest fear, is that we're not learning anything from this crisis and we're not moving forward in any way. But hopefully I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Hopefully, man.
Okay. To that point though, Dan, it's interesting. There's a lot of leaders that I've talked to in the past decade, I'm sure you have as well with your consulting, that maybe didn't get it even 5 years ago or 3 years ago. And I'm seeing a lot of people who are like, okay, now's the time. If we're going to embrace it, now's the time. And I'm much more bullish on those leaders that maybe kind of weren't committed before, because they have to, and they recognize it's time to get moving. And so to me, it's honestly been super refreshing and encouraging to have some of those conversations, because now's the time more than ever. And then to me, it's not a nice to have. If you want to stay relevant, you want to take care of your employees, you want to continue to add value for your consumers and customers, you have to do it. You have to embrace these approaches. And so it's been refreshing and encouraging. But I've definitely had my share of conversations in the past where it's I don't know if he or she's going to get it.
I had those conversations back in September 2019 with some folks, and they still didn't get it. And to be honest with you, I haven't followed up with them. But following this conversation tomorrow morning, I might just shoot a couple of emails and say, "Hey guys, going back to the conversation in September, how do you feel about innovation today?"
Yeah, they're probably going to be a lot more receptive, Dan. Come on.
I hate to be the one that's saying I told you, right? And especially in a situation like this one where people lost their lives, some of them, right? Some people lost their houses, their jobs, their well-being, right? This is not a laughing matter.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we needed to have this wake-up call as a society.
Yeah.
We needed to have this wake-up call as a society to start putting more emphasis on creativity, on curiosity, on leadership. something that we've been ignoring for
Yeah.
past 20 years, right?
And I don't,
When I joined my MBA, teaching entrepreneurship was basically the last subject in the curriculum, and we had to do it because it was nice to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's that I told you so as much. I think everybody's on their journey, and some people are ready, and sometimes it takes a little bit of turbulence to wake you up.
So who you think is going to win after this coronavirus in terms of, you know, behaving as a startup, as an entrepreneur? Who you think? And because you have told all these folks for years, hey, you should behave like this. So who's going to win? Who you think in terms of their, you know, the leader they have, in terms of industry, whatever you think, who you think is going to be the winner in this situation?
It's easy to not look at Amazon and think they're taking over the world. I mean, they had it together way before this, and they're just accelerating big time. I think the thing that might kill them if they don't take care of their employees in the right way, that's going to hurt them. But I mean, man, they're crushing it. They have the volume, and they have kind of the hook into the kind of the last 100 yards from a delivery standpoint to now. And so I have a hard time thinking anybody's going to benefit better than Amazon.
I would say the same thing. Companies that were good before the crisis are just going to get better now, right? And the companies that were poor before the crisis is just going to accelerate and highlight their flaws. That's my take. In terms of industries, I believe that highly competitive industries like banking and telco, who were under threat and they saw the threat of not and the risk. Sorry, they saw the risk of not being innovative 5 years ago. They're in a better position now than any other industry, right? Better than automotive, better than heavy industry, better than even pharma, I would say. And in terms of leadership, I would say that companies that have curious and humble leaders are going to come on top. And I believe that companies that, although are not in a favorable position now, but they went through a leadership change during the crisis, they have a good chance of coming on top.
Yes, actually, I wanted to add up to what Jason said, because uh, I have always thought about Amazon as a company that sees a market, changes it, adapts to it, and keeps changing the market. So actually, when Amazon comes into your industry, I would actually be scared, because I would not be able to recognize how they are changing, reading the market, and adapting. And those are the capabilities that the companies must have on this situation, and the ones that have it, the ones that have mastered those capabilities before the crisis, are the ones that are going to get further.
Yeah. And I think it's easy to look at them now on the tail end of all the success, but I mean, they had a lot of failures early, and they just stayed with it. And now with like AWS and Prime and Deliver, all that, like they're doing a good job. And I think they stuck with the experimentation, and they lived through some pain and some failures, right? And
Good. Okay, final question. I have a question here, and I think it's like very common, about what kind of, let's see, what kind of books, videos, or material would you recommend to understand 100% corporate startups? Of course, besides the corporate startup book, yeah, of course. Okay, besides that, you know, what do you think? What do you recommend to that people that are curious to sell in this, because, you know, they have to convince their, you know, the board, their managers, the owners of the company. You know, many times in family companies, it is very difficult to convince the board to jump on, you know, in this kind of initiatives. So what would you recommend to these people that is listening at you? and are desperate to know how to do it.
Jason, Juan, do you guys want to start? I'm just looking at my bookshelf now, and I'm gonna pick a couple.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have a different point of view, so I'll jump in here, and then you guys jump in. Like, I think foundational knowledge is good. I always double down on you being a practitioner and learning through doing, no matter how messy it is when you get started. And then I think finding mentors and people who have been there and done it and lived through it is so invaluable. And to me, people who are experienced in it and really care about innovation and growth and building into people, they'll take the time to have a coffee or a Zoom chat with you, et cetera, right? So my big thing is set the vision for what you want to learn and grow into, but maybe there's a couple of podcasts and books you listen to, but nothing takes the place of just rolling up your sleeves and trying shit and learning and putting people around you from a mentorship perspective who can kind of build into you and help you understand, because I think it'll accelerate your learning.
Walk the talk, basically.
I wanted to say that everybody has a different way for knowledge, actually. So there are people that learn a lot from reading or from watching videos or getting some knowledge from other people. I'm more like a doer. So, but actually in my company, I found a very good mixture, because my boss is actually a person that likes the methodology and likes to read a lot, and I'm more like a doer. So actually I was doing, and she was keeping me on track. She was like always, check, check, here, this is the methodology, that's how you have to do it. And that's actually a mixture that I always say everybody has to have on their innovation team. People that learn a lot from reading, from watching videos, and giving knowledge the traditional way, and people that like to do a lot, and also a lot of connections, like talk to other people, learn, for example, from Estrateg, from Sebastian. I have learned a lot just talking with them, talking about the problems, talking about the challenges, talking about the way that you are doing things, just talking. Sometimes in Colombia, we have the feeling that when we talk too much, everybody is going to steal our big break. But don't think about that, because good ideas are in Google. You just have to Google anything you think about, and there is someone that has already thought about it. The way to go from a good idea to a great implementation is to do the implementation, to go through that process. And to go through the process, you will learn a lot. And you will learn a lot the more you talk to people, the more you talk to the market. That's actually the way you do it. But from the book's perspective, I would recommend Ran Charan is someone I read a lot, other than Eric Ries. Ram Charan is very interesting books. He has good books to read. But the best way is, and you have to have in your innovation team a very good mixture of people. For example, I have a guy on our team that he likes to go and close himself in a room, read about 200 books in 1 week, learn about the technology, and then he comes back with a solution. Then he learns from what everybody talks about the solution, and that's like, but that's his way of working. There are other people that like to talk a lot with everybody and learn from the people. So it depends on how you are, and to get to know yourself, and how is the best way to get knowledge.
Okay, we're gonna see the shelf of Dan Thomas shelf.
No, I'm not gonna show. Actually, I can show you the bookshelf. Let me see if I can turn my camera here. I just stopped. I don't know how to turn the camera. Sorry. Oh, switch camera. Here we go. This is my bookshelf right there. It's just parts of it. Um, what I would recommend you read.
Read or do?
Read or do? I would say go for do. but don't take my word for it. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm always a doer. But it's always good to get inspiration. I think that we're over flooded with methodologies and best practices. So I wouldn't recommend you a book on best practices. Having written one, I wouldn't recommend you one. Obviously, read my book, but let's say you already done that. A book that made a huge impact on me, and I would recommend to everybody. I'm always coming back to this book, probably every 2 3 years. I like going back through the notes or even just opening at a random page and just read that. It's Anti-Fragile. Try to read Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Taleb. I think it's a good book. I think it's a good book. Just opens your horizons and basically teaching you more of the how to think than what to think. So that would be my personal recommendation.
Good. Okay. Finally, I have a question here in the audience. Maybe one of you wants to answer this. This guy asked, let's assume that I work in a corporate startup and I have a good growth in sales and users, but the top managers want to, it to growth of almost 20x, and I don't have the resources to achieve it. So what can we do? That's a kind of hard question. You need like a crystal ball to answer that. When wants to jump on it.
So you have a growth. You already have traction, but people want to see you have, like, let's say 3x growth, and people want to see 20x growth, right?
Yes, of course, because I guess this is Andres Acosta, so I guess they are working on like a future business, like maybe that will hit the market in maybe 2 or 3 years. So they're having maybe 2 or 3x growth, but they of course they want 20x because they need cash.
So
Cash is good. Cash is
my answer sometimes to that situation is, what would we have without this solution? If we close this, let's call this is a new product. If we close this product right now, what would we have? Or would we invest money in another product that would give us 20x? Is there another product that you have on the shelf? Like, okay, take it from the shelf and you have 20x. If the answer is yes, okay, go for it, close it, and go for the other product. But if nobody can give you an answer about that, I always say 3x is better than no x. So
My
actually
question is even simpler than that. Why do you need 20x?
Yeah. It's a conversation in terms of like expectations, but also I think it's an assumption that if you had more resources, you could increase the growth rate. And in reality, that might not be true either. So I think it's more like alignment on metrics. It's helping your leadership understand and influencing how you build things organically. I think you can use like case studies from other companies, et cetera. But and I like the point around is this actually the right thing? If the growth percentage needs to be higher, you may not ever get to 20x with what you're working on. So maybe it needs to be the resources need to be reallocated.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we have many questions here, but I think we are short of time now. It's been an hour now, so I want to thank you a lot for being here. We're gonna share all these questions. Maybe any of you want to answer this afterwards. Please follow these guys in your social media accounts, maybe LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. I don't know if any of you want to say something else, like a final remark about this topic.
Yeah, I would just leave you guys
Don't
with.
let the good Christ get wasted.
Yeah, I like that one. And I would like our tagline for our company is courageous minds only. And it's this idea of having the courage to get started and move forward, even though you don't have all the answers. And entrepreneurship and the courageous minds only is about the answers will reveal themselves as you go. And so a lot of this stuff can feel scary. It can feel super vulnerable if leadership, like you have to change how you're leading, what you're building. But trust me, if you get clear on kind of where you're going and you just start moving, things will get a lot better faster. And just would encourage you in that.
Good. Any final remark of you? Maybe one?
I just wanted to say that thank you very much, everybody. And actually, this is a track where you learn a lot. Every day you're learning. I admire you in Estrotech, what you're doing. You're bringing this knowledge to other people, to other companies. That's great. And to the other entrepreneurs or corporate entrepreneurs that are over there, if you are scared because you don't know if the product of if the company you're developing is going to be successful, but you see that the thing is growing and that everything is going a little bit according to plan, but you are scared, you are on the right path. Scare is actually scare and learning. That's the way.
Totally.
Thank you. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much. You three guys, you're amazing. Thank you for sharing with us, all what you have done, what you have said. I think there is a lot to say, a lot to discover in this topic. We're still, in the very beginning of this situation. It's too early to say who's going to win. We'll see. Of course, what you were saying, Jason and Dan, those who started like years ago or months ago, for sure they have some advantage. But let's see what happens. So thank you so much again. Have a good night, you. And
thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Sebastian. Take care, guys.
A pleasure.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Meet you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. See you. Bye.
Bye.